Hello and welcome to Tarot Sherpa. I'm Christine, and today I will be your guide through the Influence of the Angels Tarot. The Influence of the Angels Tarot was written and created by two sisters, Jodi Boginski Barbessi and Karen Boginski. Jodi is an illustrator and graphic designer for US Game Systems Inc., who is the publisher of this card, and this deck was published in 2018. Karen Boginski is a philosopher and a student of worldwide religions, and so the two sisters have combined their talents in creating what has become, well, I think, a very interesting deck. It is a tarot deck of 78 cards. You get 22 major arcana and 56 minor arcana in 4 suits: wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Your court cards are page, knight, king, queen. Very typical of a Rider-Waite style deck. As I've mentioned in other videos, print runs of tarot decks will be a run of 80 cards, and so you get an option of what to do with the extra 2 cards. And what US Games has opted to do this time is to have a nice little card with some succinct meanings for the suits and succinct meanings for the numbers. So I think that's really a nice little resource that they give in this. It does come with a guidebook, 184 pages. It is illustrated. The illustrations are tiny. Of course, the guidebook is tiny. But it does go into the names of the angels that are on the major arcana. The major arcana do have a known angel on each one of the cards as the featured character. The minor arcana will have like a little angel somewhere in the illustration. And all of the illustrations are actually from art history. There is a history that goes with each one of the paintings, and many of them are explained in the little guidebook. The guidebook gives upright and shadow meanings, so you could use the shadow meaning as a reversed meaning, or you could just use that as kind of the other point of view for the card. So it's really very nice in how they do that. It is a fully illustrated deck. All of the numbered cards have a corresponding illustration that goes with the definition of card, so that's very nice. And what they've done with the art history is to take a classical art image and then add in the features of the suit and kind of pop in a little angel in there somewhere. So let's go ahead and look at the cards. Let's begin with the Fool. This is the angel Afriel, angel of youth. Magician, the archangel Michael, who is like God. The high priestess, Raziel, the keeper of divine wisdom. The empress, Omael, angel of fertility. The emperor, Metatron, highest of all angels. Hierophant, Hasmal, guardian of truth. The lovers, Chamuel, guardian of relationships. Chariot, Yehudiel, angel of direction and endeavor. Strength, Zadkiel, angel of mercy. Hermit, Rumliel, angel of awakening. The wheel of fortune, Domiel, the angel of the 4 elements. Justice, Raguel, angel of justice, fairness, and harmony. The hanged man, Cassio, the watcher. Death, Azrael, guide of souls to heaven. Temperance, Bagless, angel of moderation. The devil, Samael, the fallen venom of God. Tower, Barachiel, angel of lightning. Star, Raphael, guardian, God heals. The moon, Elamaiah, angel of inward journeys. The sun, the cherubim, those who surround the throne of God. Judgment. Judgment has 4 angels. Zachriel, angel of memory. Dahariel, angel of purification. Colopatrion, the angel of liberation. And Valolel, angel of peace. And this is an icon of Saint Mary of Egypt. Look her up, she's got an interesting story. And finally, the world, Perpetual, angel of success. We'll go on to the suit of cups. Ace of cups. 2. 3. 4 of cups. 5 of cups. 6. 7. 8 of cups. 9 of cups. I just tucked a little angel there in that guy's arm. 10 of cups. And here's the page of cups. Now the court cards are all historical references that get called out in the book. And this is actually a portrait of Dante Alighieri as a boy. And in his little cup is his inspiration, Beatrice. Dante being famous for the Inferno. The Knight of Cups is John Dowland, who was a composer and musician back in and around 1600. And he was probably what we would call today one of the top 10 pop stars of his time. Queen of Cups is the wonderful second first lady of the United States, Abigail Adams. What's interesting about a lot of the portraiture, you see this in other portraits of the period in the United States, is they would have somebody else sit in as the body, and then they would paint in the head of the historical figure. They would paint that in later, so you can kind of tell that the head doesn't quite go with the body. And in Abigail's case, her head's a little bit bigger. You can think of a very famous portrait of George Washington where his head's abnormally small for the same reason. But this was probably painted when she was First Lady of the United States, right around 1797. And then our King of Cups is Erasmus of Rotterdam, probably painted around 1490. Erasmus was a revolutionary figure in that he was a reformer of the Catholic Church, but not a Protestant reformer. He was actually working on kind of grassroots reform, and he had written a vernacular version of the Bible, and it was actually a study Bible, which are really popular among people these days, that would have explanatory text to give context to the passages of Scripture. Let's move on to the swords. Here with the ace. Two of swords. 3. You can see that they follow very much the classical meaning of the cards. And just kind of adding in a little bit of the suit there. 5 of swords. Six of Swords. 7. The descriptions of the book go into how the historical art refers to the classic interpretation of the card. 10 of Swords. All right, so here with our Page of Swords, this is Denis Diderot as a boy, and he was a very prominent writer during the Enlightenment in France. And if you don't know this portrait, this is the Niccolo Machiavelli, who was the author of The Prince, and his name has been remembered as being, quote, Machiavellian, in that he had advice for leadership in Renaissance Italy, because he lived right around the time of 1500. And so he's rather famous for being perpetuating the idea that the end justifies the means. The means may not always be the fairest. Queen of Swords is Mary Wollstonecraft, who is credited with probably being the first suffragette in England. She lived around the turn of the 18th century. Very interesting author in her day. And then the King of Swords, Sir Francis Bacon. If I have to explain this, you don't need this deck. Ace of Pentacles. I'm going on to the Suit of Pentacles. Did Bacon write Shakespeare's works? We don't know. Who says Shakespeare didn't? Two of Pentacles. Debates for another show. Not my show. Three of Pentacles. Working together. I like that. Four of Pentacles. What's interesting about the bigger picture that this comes from, so, you know, one of the Flemish masters, but there's a whole lot of other things going on in the larger painting, and then they just kind of slid all these little pinnacles in and cropped all the other people out. I love it. Five of Pentacles. This is a Bruegel kind of talking. Bruegel was a really interesting painter, in interesting Flemish painter, in that he tried to capture kind of like what was going on in everyday life. And these were all of the handicap outcasts. Six of Pentacles. Seven of Pentacles. Eight of Pentacles. She reminds me of my great-grandmother. Nine of Pentacles. Ten of Pentacles. And the Page of Pentacles. And here we have the inventor James Watt. This was probably in about 1745. He was an inventor and a scientist. This is him as a boy. The Knight of Pentacles is William Caxton. He was an English merchant, a translator, and a publisher, and he actually produced the first book ever in English. He published over 100 books and was a translator for about 26 of them. Queen of Pentacles. This is Hannah Glassa, and she had written a book in the mid-1700s. This is probably about 1747, called The Art of Cooking Made Plain and Easy, and it's credited as being the very first cookbook ever printed. And the King of Pentacles. This is Giovanni de' Medici de' Medici. This is probably from about 1400, and he had founded the Medici Bank, and this became the basis of the Medici family power. And if I have to say anything more about the Medicis, maybe this isn't your deck. Ace of Wands. All right, I'll quit being catty. Maybe. Two of Wands. Peeking out from behind the tree. Watch out. Three of Wands. Four of Wands. Five of Wands. Six of Wands. Seven of Wands. Eight of Wands. Nine of Wands. 10 of Wands. And the Page of Wands. So the Page of Wands is Angelica Kaufmann, who was a Swiss painter, and this portrait was probably done by her father in around 1757. She was a child prodigy. She spoke many languages. She had been an apprentice to her father, who was a muralist, and by her teenage years was a very well-known artist all on her own, and she had many commissions to do portraits throughout Europe. This is the Knight of Wands, and it is Samuel de Champlain, who was a French navigator, explorer, and cartographer. He established the city of Quebec, and I believe was the first governor of New France. This was in and around 1600. Queen of Wands, Marguerite de Navarre, who is the Queen of Navarre. And you can kind of see a little Snuffles the cat down here. Oh, it's not a black cat, but I think the cat was actually probably part of the original painting and perhaps a companion animal to Her Majesty there. She's considered to be the mother of the French Renaissance. She was the sister of Francis I, who was the King of France. And she was a well-known author and a very progressive thinker in her day. John Brown. So he was an abolitionist before the Civil War in the United States, and was hanged in 1759 for raiding a U.S. arsenal to get weapons and ammunition to conduct a raid in the course of freeing slaves. So I always look at John Brown and wonder if he had waited about 5 years, if he'd have been a hero rather than a terrorist. But then again, if he had, would the momentum to be a free nation actually have had the right start? Wondersome ponderables. Finally, the two cards that didn't come out super clear when I was showing you earlier, but these are the bonus cards you get with this deck, and you get the minor arcana suit meanings and then the number meanings. And these are always good things to have in your pocket when you're trying to interpret any deck. So, nice to have. And there's the back of the cards. I hope you enjoyed our journey through the Influence of the Angels tarot deck. Roses and Thorns for this deck. I thoroughly enjoy this deck, and I actually use it for very particular types of readings, typically when I'm checking up on people who are close to me, or when I'm reading for people who are close to me. So for me, this is a rather emotional deck. One of the advantages of this deck is it kind of steers away from the occult, and sometimes getting into the occult kind of, since it's occult, it's not widely known. People who are not familiar with occult teachings or images or anything, they get a little afraid of what they don't know. Well, this kind of very much taps into a common Western history for a lot of people, and so it can be kind of a nice starter deck for some folks that don't really want to get into the occult. They don't want to know about Aleister Crowley. They don't want to know about Rider-Waite-Smith, but they do like angels, and they can deal with history, and that becomes an inroad for a lot of people. You know, having studied history, you know, both at an undergraduate and graduate level, I love the fact that this deck goes into history. But if history is not your thing, then this might not be your deck. So could be a rose, could be a thorn, depends on your point of view. If you liked this review, please hit like. If you enjoy this type of content, please subscribe. I'm going to follow this up with a reading using the influences of the Angels deck. One of the spreads that's in the back of the book is an influence of the angel spread, and so I'm going to use that one and illustrate kind of how the cards are used, but it'll be a good for whoever reading, and I hope that you will join me there. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.